Okay, everybody, welcome to this interview follow-up podcast episode where we're talking about Liesl Tesch. Liesl Tesch, if you haven't done so already, go back and listen to her interview. Geez, what a dynamic lady, Ali. She's done a lot in her life. Olympian, politician, so many achievements in her life. What a wonderful woman.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're disabled or not, just go and listen to that for half an hour, and I guarantee you'll have more energy at the end of that half an hour just listening to her speak. So yeah, it's awesome.
I don't know how she's fit it all into her life. She's just a 7-time Olympian and Paralympian. Unbelievable with the basketball and sailing, and multiple gold medalists, silver medalists, bronze medalists, and now representing Gosford as a politician in the state government. She's a dynamic lady and doing so much for the community. It was fantastic to listen to.
It's interesting because, again, I want people to go back to listen to that episode because you'll see the type of person she is. Sometimes ex-athletes get a little bit of a negative reputation if they go into politics or something like that. But she deserves every bit of it. She's an absolute go-getter. And one thing, I guess, to even, segue onto the conversation, the thing that actually highlighted for me in the beginning was she was a very athletic, sporty person. And what she said was that whole environment of being around the wheelchair athletes was the sort of express kind of recovery or rehab, because she was amongst a community of people that were just, as she said, living standard lives, boyfriends, girlfriends, playing sport, doing this, and there was just a wheelchair there, but that was just it, So I thought that's pretty good, even recommendation for people getting to sports, getting to activeness, and there's a whole ready-made community ready to go.
Yeah, even if it is a disability association that you're getting involved in, you do get to experience other people's lives and how they're living their lives. And that's what she reflected on. She saw people with disabilities when she first got to the basketball stadium, but then she also saw how they were getting on and living full lives with girlfriends and cars and so on and so forth. It was a great, energetic thing that she said. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and another interesting thing of that, I guess, I thought a little bit of the athlete mentality, but also a bit of that old school mentality, which we've seen with a couple of the guys like Peter as well. When there wasn't any resources, you just kind of had to make it work. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have the OTs, and you didn't have those. I mean, she had some stuff, but it was very basic and no funding, none of that stuff. So no hand controls, none of that stuff. Just get into it and figure it out, So and if you couldn't use yourself, you couldn't, you just had to do it. So,
yeah. So we didn't ask her whether she ever tried hand controls before she got her license, and we probably should have asked that question, but it didn't sound like it. It sounded like she just wanted to get her license, so she jumped in a car with her orthotics, her AFOs, her ankle foot orthotics, and taught herself how to drive with her family and friends and so forth, and went and sat her test without any intervention from any health professionals along the way. And it's still happening today, and we applaud the people that get out and have a go. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think the thing I really like to highlight about that is, so even as Liesl said, I mean, I was remembering when I was a kid as well. Like she said, we only had the one car, we didn't have much money, et cetera, et cetera. I remembered when I was a kid in the 80s, we also only had one car because that's all we could afford. And there was no such thing as car loans, personal loans, like that kind of stuff no one even knew what that was, right? So if you didn't have the money in your bank account to buy a car, you didn't have a car. That was it. It was a very simple scenario, So I guess the situation today, though, is that if you want to buy a car, you can go get a loan. You can get so much access to stuff. If you want to get products, you can get funding. You can get so much access. And we get people complaining, they don't fund the car or they don't fund this. But look, that Liesl story 30 years ago, they had nothing. You couldn't even get a car. You just had to figure out the family car,
He had a friend that dropped her off at uni every day to backwards and forwards. And,
Yeah. So we have so much more available now. We've got cars we want, was it Jack that we spoke to? You know, he got himself a Hyundai, probably got it on a car loan, maybe not, doesn't matter. But the point is he at a young guy was able to, in our society, go and buy a relatively modern car, you know, and 30 years ago, that wasn't even something you thought about because it was just not even an option on the table. So just to me, I guess it's more encouragement. I guess the theme of this podcast is get out there and try stuff. You really don't have an excuse not to, you know, you know what I mean? Like there's so much stuff out there and so many cars and everything is so much easier to access than people like Liesl that, then, you know, why not?
Yeah. Well, let's get into how she actually drives, because that's what this episode is all about, is reflecting on those details about the actual driving, the actual getting out and about. So let's reflect on that. So she doesn't use hand controls. She uses her feet on the pedal. She's a incomplete spinal cord injury. She's got some movement in her thighs and in her, or it would be her buttocks and hip flexors and so forth as well. But then below the knee is where she's got more dysfunction in her foot. And that's why she's got the ankle foot orthotics to keep her ankle in a fixed position so she's able to stand on them. But when it comes to driving, she's actually using them to press the pedals.
Yeah. And as we mentioned just before this was what she's done is, I guess, she's not using aids on the car, she's using aids on the person, you know. So there is still some kind of assistive technology going on. May not be high tech like a lot of the new stuff that you see, but it's still a form of assistive technology, or AT. And I guess it's important to highlight that there is still something there. The thing is, though, it was interesting, which you pointed out as well. She has had to also evolve to use other sensors in her body. So that's almost like a pseudo assistive technology in a way, because she's heightening the other parts of her body and the other senses to give herself this direction, to be able to use those controls.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, we can't see inside her brain. We can't scan her brain, but I'm sure that the other senses part of her brain may be a little bit larger than mine when it comes to driving. Yeah, I'm sure she'd be tuning into how the car is reacting based on her foot rather than that feel of that touch on the pedal.
I mean, she verified that as well. And that's the thing, like but what was interesting, she never really thought about it. You know, that was all the get on with life sort of thing. And then once we started discussing, she started going, yeah, actually, I don't have the full sensations and I am using other senses and so on and so forth. So perfect example of that, you know.
Yeah, she's old school in regards to how long ago she got her license. I wonder if she's actually got it on her license that she needs to wear or her orthotics. She did hint that on occasion she doesn't wear her orthotics because they're giving her nerve pain and so forth. And she hinted that she drove. I wonder if it is actually a restriction on her license to wear her orthotics. These days, it probably... it would be a restriction on your license. Previously, people just had hand controls on license, but now it's becoming a little bit more specific in regards to what type of hand controls or where the spinner knob has to be with or without a spinner knob and so forth. So I just want people to be aware that you may, if you're going to drive with orthotics and you go to get your license, they're probably going to restrict you to always drive with especially here in South Australia, with your orthotics on.
I mean, it's the same in New South Wales. What's happened is, like you mentioned, and I've actually seen it very rapidly, particularly since NDIS has come out, but there has been a huge evolution of the requirements. So yeah, people like Liesl, I would hazard a guess there's nothing on her license. It's probably just it is what it is. And because that's kind of what it was in those days, as she said, you had to figure it out, but that was the same with the license authorities and all of them. They were like, look, you figured it out. It's fine, you know, like we don't know what to do with this either, you know, so if you're driving, you're happy, we're happy, you know. So that was kind of that general attitude. And I know that with the mobility engineering supplier hat, even in the very beginning days of NDIS, like 2013, 2014, there was none of that stuff, you know. There was nothing for the licenses. I remember people would say, oh, what do I do with the state authority? We just say, I don't know, just go talk to them. And they don't seem to have a procedure. They just ask you a couple of questions, and if gets to put it on your license, it does or it doesn't. But now, as you said, it's much more clear. Like even particularly in New South Wales, I know if it's going to have some kind of implication from a like a regulatory point of view or ADR or compliance point of view, you actually have to have a very, very specific letter of the products that has an authority that these products, specific products, this make and model of product will go in this vehicle, in this position for this person. And once they're not using it, they have to reverse it, So, and I guess the thing I'm trying to point out really here and get to is Liesl was saying that she sometimes drives without it on because it gives her pain. And then we got into the discussion that you need to keep trying stuff out so it doesn't give you pain. Yeah. So if you've done everything properly, if you've gone and done all those trials and you've gone and done everything, there's no reason why it shouldn't be on your license, and it wouldn't actually cause you any issues or any drawback because you've done all the trials, you've done everything properly, and you've tried everything, and found out, okay, and persistence, as she said, you might need 6 to 12 months to figure it out, like it's yeah, that was a good point.
Nobody should be driving with pain, whether it's their shoulder pain from having to control the steering wheel, or they're getting niggles when they're having to use hand controls, or even if it was Liesl and it was causing her hip pain because she's using more hip than I would use because I use my ankle movement to be able to get that small amount of pressure. She has to use her back and hip. So she might be getting some lower lumbar pain from actually having to hold her leg up in the air. And these are all the things that really should be looked out for. But like she said, one of the main things, and she really zoned in on this, if you're a wheelchair user, you've got to look after your shoulders. That's come up multiple times in this podcast already. Looking after your shoulders for your longevity in life, so you can actually keep on getting out and about when you're older and getting on in life is vital.
Yeah. It actually was interesting though, because I felt like she had a slightly different perspective to Peter Simmons, yes, which we spoke to. Yes. That was really interesting because he also was older. He was older than Liesl, but it was interesting because he seemed to. I remember him saying that the OTs and everyone told him, look, you're going to have all these issues when you're older. And he does have those issues, but he actually doesn't regret it. And and he was very happy that he lived the life that he did. Yeah. But it seemed like Liesl was kind of hinting more towards, get the right stuff because I'm being limited by these things, and she was really harping on about that.
Everyone's an individual, isn't it? Like that's what it highlights. And if people want to go jump off of cliffs with a parachute, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. There's no way that I'm going to do that. But people choose to do these things and potentially injure themselves. And I guess it's no different when we come to this. If it gives you the freedom and the lifestyle that you want, then as long as you're making an informed choice, I'm not sure if all base jumpers are making an informed choice. I don't know, but I don't do that. But if you're making an informed choice, then it's an informed choice and it's your choice.
Yeah, and that's a real big theme of the NDIS, and even Liesl did mention a couple of things about the whole choice and control and so on, right? So it is, but I think what then happens is, to be honest, probably I don't envy the OTs in that situation because you've got to be very, very clear on your communication and I guess also getting that feedback that the user understands the implications on a long term, because you might have someone who's had an experience that they've driven, right? And they're so excited about that. I mean, you've probably had this as well, Brad. You've had someone that's so excited and they're so scared that you might stop that opportunity from going forward that they will BS their way out of anything, Right. So as the therapist, it's your role to kind of have that X-ray vision almost to kind of, it's bloody hard, but you almost have to be thinking, what are these guys thinking? Like what's going on more than just behind the scenes, in between the lines.
Yeah, there's the next step on from it as well. So it's about looking through the BS and making sure that they are making an informed decision. And if they make an informed decision and choose something that you wouldn't recommend, you've got to make sure it's safe, but there may be a better product or a better solution. But as long as the first one is safe, then who are we to say that then they shouldn't be recommended this through the NDIS, but then it actually goes to the NDIS as well. And then they've got an opinion to make of whether it's worthwhile and value for money, and whether it's going to be a good solution, value for money wise, for the next 5 to 8 years. Sometimes you can do all of these tests and trials and it suits their lifestyle, but then it hits a hurdle when it actually gets to the NDIS, and they've got their own opinion about what is an appropriate product for the client for the next 8 years. And we've come across that turn too. I mean, your background photo at the moment is the turnout seat, and we've recommended the turnout seat, but then it's got to NDIS and they're saying, well, no, we think a better solution is actually a wheelchair accessible van, where the person's in their wheelchair. And we've had to go through multiple backwards and forwards with the NDIS to actually show that no, that's not a good decision from the NDIS point of view, because it doesn't suit their lifestyle. It doesn't suit what they're going to be able to do long term. You might have an opinion that the person needs to be in a power wheelchair, but they've got an opinion that they're never going to use a power wheelchair. So it's, as an OT, you're sometimes stuck.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But that's where actually what I'm thinking of is the episode that we did with Catherine Ray. Was that last week or the week? It was one of the last interviews we did. But go back and listen to that, particularly if you're a therapist, because she was working on the other side as an assessor and with assessors and things like that. And she gave some gold in that episode about what to put in your reports. And most of it is actually counterintuitive to the way that the therapist brain works. The therapist and the mechanical engineer, who I am, work very similarly, very, very kind of analytical, methodical, ticking boxes and going through things and justifying things, whereas didn't seem like that was the main thing. It was more selling the story of this lifestyle and this is how it's going to work.
Well, that's the same with Dee as well. Go back and listen to that one as well. And she introduced us to the impact statement for her and her daughter, and how that product was actually going to impact their life. And she worked so hard in those early stages with the NDIS to try and get certain products to meet their lifestyle needs. Yeah,
and theirs was it was a product that was being told, go get a wheelchair accessible vehicle, but no, they knew that was not the best thing for them, and they fought for it. So yeah, and that was a big theme of what Liesl was talking about. Fight for what you want, what's right for you, and speak up and say, no, this is not right, it's not comfortable, or it's not good, or I want something different, or etc. That's the whole point of what's going on in NDIS and so on, is giving you that voice and giving you that confidence, so it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of other little things that I want to talk about with the orthotics. Let's get it back to Liesl and her story. There are different types of orthotics out there, and getting the right orthotic could make a massive difference between hand controls and not hand controls. And the big difference between hand controls and not hand controls is your choice of vehicle. If the assistive aid is on you and your person, then you can drive any car. And if you're restricted to hand controls, then you're restricted to a car with hand controls. So the right personal product, the right orthotic, can make a massive, massive difference in regards to lifestyle and choice moving forward, whether it's hire cars, whether it's buying your new car into the future. So many different levels of opportunity. So let's just talk about the types of orthotics that are out there. Because if you've got some movement or no movement in your right ankle, then this could lead to a massive difference for you. I asked Liesl whether she's got a hinged or a static AFO, and she said she's got a static one, which means that the bit that goes underneath her foot doesn't hinge with the bit that goes behind her calf. So it's like the letter L, or the upside down number 7, and she places her foot or a heel into that bend, and then she puts her foot into her custom shoes to be able to fit all of that in there. There's no movement in that ankle joint at all when she's got her orthotics on. Some people get a little bit of plantar flexion, so that's the actual pushing their toes away from you. That's what plantar flexion is. pushing the toes away from you. If you've got foot drop, you may have plantar flexion, but you may not have dorsiflexion, which is bending the toes back towards you. And having the right orthotic, if you can have plantar flexion, then you might be able to press into the pedals, but then you can't lift your toes off the pedals. And if we can get a hinged orthotic or an elastic orthotic, then there may be potential for you to drive with no hand controls whatsoever.
Yeah, and the benefit of that is, as you said, one of the big kind of complaints we always get about hand controls and people using hand controls is traveling. It just is almost impossible. And you could hear her story traveling all around the world. It's one less barrier, you know, and one less barrier not having to have those hand controls. You still got the aids, but they're on you rather than, you know, so I thought it was a pretty, I guess, my thought process always goes to equipment on the car because I'm a car engineer.
Yeah.
And it was a really good learning about, you know, you can actually solve with AT on the body, you know. And
absolutely. There's another product out there that we should just really touch on. It's still an AFO, but it's a little bit different. It's a foot up, and there's multiple different types of foot ups now. A foot up is more of an elastic. So what it does is it either attaches underneath or through your shoelace eyelets, and the elastic literally pulls your shoelaces back up for you. And you can push into the elastic if you've got plantar flexion, but the elastic pulls it back up. Okay. We have had great success with that product to be able to drive if you've got a foot drop. So have a consideration for orthotics that are out there. And
you need special shoes for them?
You don't need special shoes. You know, if you just keep talking for a second, I can actually, for people that listen to this through YouTube, or we can put a link to it as well. I'll go grab it and can actually.
Well, I will explain. The reason why I was asking that is one thing which I've been following online is Nike has been investing quite a lot of resources into building an accessible range of shoes.
Flyers. Yeah.
And basically there's I've seen a whole bunch of different designs, and it looks like, for example, if you did have these orthotics, like this, the shoe is able to act like you can put it on a lot easier, you know, so.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get the focus in on here.
There we go.
Oh, come on, camera. All right. So, so this one here is one of the products that are out there. So this is a rebound foot up. This one's by, I think you say that name, USA.
Yeah.
USA. But what it does is it literally, can you see that there? It literally goes around your ankle and attaches to your shoelaces, and that elastic pulls the shoe back up to your chin, basically.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And so if you can imagine this bit here, the little eyelet, you can actually screw that through the little hole where your shoelace goes through, and then just connect it up around your ankle. And what that does is it does the dorsiflexion for you. It pulls your toes back off the pedal. So you can push against the elastic, and it's actually adjustable. You can actually adjust the length of the elastic as well to be able to increase or decrease tension. Okay, so the tighter you pull it, the more it's going to pull up, and the more you have to struggle against the elastic. So it can become a bit more of a static AFO for you when you go to walk. But then when it comes to driving, you can loosen it off a little bit, and then you get a little bit more range to push into the pedals, and it makes it a little bit freer for you as well. So that product can make a massive difference for somebody if they're tossing up hand controls and they've got a foot drop of some sort, or in Liesl case, an incomplete spinal injury. So, get out there and talk to your therapist, really. And if your therapist doesn't know about this kind of stuff, maybe introduce them. Maybe they haven't come across it yet, and then see if it's going to be the right product for you, because we know, and it's been mentioned, I can't remember which interview it was actually in there, but the clients introducing the OTs to products, and then the OT goes, "Oh, yes, that is a good product. Yes, that does work." Yeah, and that happens.
Well, look, as Liesl said, there's products from, I mean, I do agree with her in terms of pushing for local manufacturing, but at the same time, like she said, she's been to Sarajevo and Italy and all these different funky products. And think about it, there's 7+ billion people all around the world. You're going to have some pretty cool, innovative stuff around there. So yeah, like keep searching and keep the mind open, because you'll probably find, particularly what we're finding now, like I found in the last, probably again with our mobility engineering hat on, in the last 3 to 5 years, a lot of the products that we've started to sell in Australia has been because the customers come and said, hey, go from this company and I've found this. And so a lot of the disability community, they spend a lot of their time online. And so they're probably a much better resource than what you think. And don't be afraid to listen to that. And that's sometimes, again, just depends on the therapist or the modifier. Sometimes some people sort of shun a little bit at the customer and thinking, oh, what do they know? I'm the professional. But think about it, that like we've seen it so many times, particularly with the carers, that they outdo the professionals all the time with all their knowledge, because they're on the line and this is their life every day, so so listen to that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Don't be afraid. If you're an OT listening to this, don't be afraid to be introduced to something by a client. They really do. They spend a lot of time online researching their own products and so forth. Sometimes they'll come to you with the right aid. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll come to you with an idea that just won't work, whether it's the vehicle, whether it's not appropriate for Australian road design and standards. But it's a lot of other times it will work. And absolutely. Yeah. All right. Should we wind it up?
Maybe we should wrap it up from here, eh?
Yeah, it was a great one. I really enjoyed Liesl. And if you want to get Liesl back on, let us know. We had lots of unanswered questions in regards to maybe even the NDIS and about her life or about how she drives. So if you've got any further questions, we will put the email to her if you want to talk about something from a political viewpoint, where she's shared her MP office email with us, and we'll put that in the show notes. So if you'd like to get in contact with her, you can.
And don't be afraid, because how we got that interview was I literally emailed her on that Gosford at New South Wales Parliament or whatever it was. So my point is she's actually listening and responding to all those emails, so there might be people that you might think, oh no, they don't listen, blah, 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 but I've actually had personal experience with her, and she's very, very passionate. And just go listen to the episode. You'll have no doubts about it,
Yeah. And if you've got any other feedback for us, or anybody that you might think would be worthwhile coming on and being interviewed, make sure you get in contact with us. Probably through our Facebook page is the best place to do that. Go and search for the Drive Able podcast, 2 separate words or an underscore in between, and go and search for that. It'll come up, and you can personal message us, and we'll certainly get back to you. And if you've got a contact for us to interview, then don't be afraid to introduce us.
Yeah. And as we say in every episode, and this was a huge theme of this episode and Liesl's episode as well, if you have any queries about what you can do and what will work for you, get in contact with your local OT or mobility dealer and set yourself up with a trial. And if the trial doesn't work, keep going out and keep trying.
Another trial. That's right.
Trials really do put you in that driver's seat. So, yeah.
All right, Ali. Thanks very much, and see you in the next episode, everyone.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate, and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.